Welcome to the AIU World Symposium on Innovative Ideas. And today's date is the 29th of June, 2022. My name is Dr. Edward Lambert. I'm here with Dr. Franklin Valsine. And our next presenter is going to be Dr. Rowan Van Dyk. We'll go ahead and set him up now, make sure he is ready to. I'm going to make him a presenter, a co-host in this meeting, so that he will be able to present his view of innovative ideas. And so, Dr. Van Dyk, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes,
hello,
yes.
hi, welcome.
Do you want to share your presentation from your computer, or do you want me to share it from my computer?
I don't know. I can share it from my computer or from you. You can share it either way, whichever is going to work best for you.
Well, I'll set it up to share from my computer. In the meantime, tell us about yourself, where you're from, what are you studying at AIU?
Okay, I am originally from South Africa. I was born in a little wine-producing city in the Cape Town area called Stellenbosch. I lived most of my life there. I've traveled around Africa, around South Africa mostly. For the last 7 years, I've been residing in Namibia, which is a northern neighbor to South Africa. And I own a training institution in Namibia as well as one in South Africa as well. So that's it. I studied DBA, Doctorate in Business Administration from AIU, which I obtained, I think, in 2015. So for you youngsters out there, I was 52, 53 when I got my doctorate. So there's time for all of you still. Don't give up yet. And then basically what I do is I've been in the training business. I own my own training business. I have now for the last 23 years. And currently I work with the Namibian Training Authority, the government helping them develop qualifications, mostly for the retail space, and develop assessments, outcomes-based assessments. And so that's sort of my field. I'm also a best-selling author of about 12 books at the moment, and I am also a professional speaker. So that's sort of me in a nutshell. Married, wife, 2 children, 2 grandchildren. What else do you want to know?
Sounds wonderful. So even after you're 50, you're still moving a lot forward with your life.
My biggest concern in life is that my mother and her sister both got Alzheimer's. So I am totally petrified of getting Alzheimer's. So I write books, I write music, I've made CDs, I do all kinds of things just to keep my brain busy and to stay out of my wife's way. So, but that's it. I don't know. I've always had a very inquisitive mind. I enjoy finding out about stuff, and learning new stuff.
Well, so, let's now go into your innovative ideas to help everybody be inspired.
I suppose people would call it innovative, but if you really think about it, it's not really innovative. It's just we've stopped doing it. It's something that we used to do and we've just given up on it. And
are you ready to start your presentation?
I am quite ready.
I'm going to bring it up right now.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
All right. So, okay. Must I start it or? Let me just see here quickly. Why is it not opening up the presentation?
I opened it up. Can you see it on the screen?
I can see it on the screen, but it also still has the slides on the side. But anyway, okay, so let's get into this. We're talking about innovative ideas. We have been listening to the previous speaker on wealth distribution. I've heard the word entrepreneurship being bandied around, and all of this really ties into that. Now, I have called this adding salt to obtain effective training results. And the SALT is actually an acronym. I love acronyms. Everything I do, I try and work in acronyms, and it makes it easier to remember, and it's also easier to explain because it becomes a little bit catchy. So it basically boils down, if we look at the next slide, okay, yeah. So I don't know who of you have ever heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Suppose many of you have heard that saying. It's a proverb that was originally made famous by a gentleman called John Haywood back in 1175. And for those of you who don't know the proverb, it basically means that you can help somebody, you can provide assistance, you can try as much as you want, but unless the person wants to actually do what you're teaching them or giving them or helping them with, nothing will happen. There has to be a concerted effort from their side. And that's basically the basis of my talk today, is I want to have a look at training. So I want to tell you a story first. It's about myself. Next slide doesn't want to go. All right. Years ago, as you noticed, I mentioned my age. I'm 62 at the moment, and having got into the professional speaking and online training game in the last 5 or 6 years has forced me to learn a couple of new skills that I've never learned before. Edward, you want to advance the slide? Where did Edward go? Okay, I don't know why the slide's not advancing, guys. There we go. Okay, now I'm suddenly just disappeared. All right, sorry, excuse me for that. So, as a presenter, as a trainer, as an author, as a speaker, I sometimes have to use technology and specifically social media to try and improve what I do, like using these slides and bumbling my way through it. So I looked at a lot of these software packages, and one of them that sort of stood out for me apart from all of them was Photoshop. And I decided that I was going to learn Photoshop. So I did a course, took my laptop along. It was actually great. I spent the whole day learning how to manipulate through the software package. I could even nearly learn how to remove the bags from under my eyes and all those type of things. And it was brilliant. And I could see the value of this course and of the software package. The problem was that even after that and learning all of that, I still suck at Photoshop. And the biggest reason is that I didn't practice it enough. I learned it, I went back, and because I didn't use it on a daily basis, I eventually forgot. And if you think of a lot of things that you've learned over the years, if you didn't carry on doing it, there's a chance that you now might have an idea of how it works, but you don't quite know how it works because you haven't practiced it. So I needed to use it over and over. I'm now in a situation where I work with a guy that shares an office in my office block, that every time I need something done, because he is the pro in Photoshop, I run to him and he has to help me and show me. And then I get along for a while and then I forget again. So this gets me back to what I want to talk about today. Now, firstly, I want to give you some statistics. You're a university, you students, we love working with stats and research and this type of thing. Now, most of these statistics come from Gallup. Unfortunately, I'm not writing a thesis, so I'm not going to go to all the effort of also giving my bibliography and my references. I'm just going to give you the statistics so as not to make it too boring. Now, if we look at some of the stats, they reckon that up to 70% of people currently employed today feel that they don't have enough skills. They haven't been taught enough. They haven't received all the training that they're supposed to have received. And this causes frustration. I mean, the buzzwords these days is the great resignation. It's things like engaged, not engaged. And these are issues that we struggle with in the workplace, especially if you're looking at entrepreneurs and all of this stuff. Another statistic is that what they have found is enterprises and companies that put effort into training and do decent, proper, effective training increase their profits by up to 21%. Now that's, if you're in business, especially in big business, to increase your bottom line and your profits by 21%, that is a major achievement. And they reckon that it's done through proper, effective training. A lot of things that we sit with, and I suppose we find it especially with online training these days because there's no personal connection there, is that up to 41% of people employed in the business world think that training is boring. That could be because it's not done properly. That could be because they don't see the relevance to the training that they are getting. And then, which helps us to maneuver into the online training space, and especially with students like yourselves and myself that have studied through distance learning or other forms of online training, is that nearly 60% of people say that they prefer to study at their own pace. That's because we have lives to live, we have businesses to run, we have jobs. Some of us don't have the time to spend full-time training. That is why a university like AIU is so brilliant, is because it offers you that freedom to study at your own pace. So this brings me back to the proverb. So in the proverb, I said to you that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Now, in my industry, in the training industry, we've often joked when we do training and we don't get the results that we wanted, we say that you can lead somebody to knowledge, but you can't make them think. This is where our problem comes in when we look at training. And we have people that say training is not effective. And there's many reasons why training isn't effective. There's the fault can lie with the learners or the people being trained, the trainees. The fault can lie with the trainers. The fault can lie with the organizations. What I'm saying is, from a university perspective, from a training perspective, from a trainer, a workplace trainer, whatever form of education, training, or skills development that you're involved in, you can lead a horse to water and you can make a drink. All you have to do is feed it enough salt. And the salt is an acronym. So you think for yourself, if you give a horse salt, it's going to get thirsty and it's going to drink by itself. So this acronym that I'm talking about in SALT is 4 steps that we go through. The first one is providing the knowledge. So we use the S, and I call it show and tell. So I coach you, I show you, I teach you, I give you study material, I give you online videos, whatever format is available, I can provide the knowledge for you. Textbooks, somebody at work, a mentor, whatever. But having knowledge alone is not enough. So I can teach you all the theory, I can give you all the facts, I can go to as many Photoshop courses as I want to. That will provide all the knowledge. They will show me how to do all the manipulating, how to do all the formatting and create new layers and change colors and do all kinds of things. All that does is it fills my head with knowledge. But if I don't apply it, if I don't go and practice it, which is the A, the application, I will never know whether I can do it. Now, I love using coffee as an example in a lot of the training that I do, especially when it comes to competency-based or outcomes-based training and education. I love using a cup of coffee because maybe tea, maybe something else, but just about everybody in the world drinks coffee. So you'll understand the coffee. So the coffee, the show and tell would be, I would explain to you. I would give you a diagram. I would give you a PowerPoint presentation. I'd give you a book. I'd give you a manual, step-by-step, how to, any of those things that would describe to you how to make a cup of coffee. But I have no guarantee that you can make a cup of coffee. So what I need to do is I need to use the second step. And that second step is the application. So teaching you how to make a cup of coffee, I now need to let you actually make the cup of coffee. So I can see, are you doing it correctly? Did you boil the water? Did you actually put coffee in the cup? Did you fill it up correctly? Have you put in the sugar or not, or whatever the preference is that the person wants? That is the only way that I will know that you actually learned how to make a cup of coffee from the show and tell. The problem with just applying is that if you think of anything in your life, riding a bicycle, I don't know, flying a kite, whatever you did, building something, the first time you try to do it practically, you probably messed it up because you didn't get it right. And that is important. So I might not do it right the first time. Yes, granted, there will be people that will probably get it right the first time. I can give you examples of people that do that, but I think they fell off another planet somewhere, because the bulk of us need to practice a thing a couple of times to get to do it properly. So making the cup of coffee, I can see the steps that you followed. I can see, have you done it correctly? Have you followed the steps in the right sequence? Have you followed the correct steps? Now, granted, if I show you how to make a cup of coffee, and I now get you to actually make a cup of coffee, you might not want to drink the coffee. It might not taste that nice. But that's okay, because that's the whole purpose of it. Now, these first two steps, this is what organizations, everybody, we spend a lot of time on these first two steps. The field that I work in outcomes-based and competency-based education and training, that's what we do. We give you a theory component, we give you the practical, we show you how to do it. We teach you how to ride a bicycle, we let you ride the bicycle. But we only let you ride it once, because there's an expense. I can't spend too long having you ride the bicycle over and over and over till you get better, because it's going to cost me money. And the client or the organization, 10 to 1, doesn't want to have that expense. They don't want to spend that money. So we end up with problems where we're teaching people and training is ineffective. And these 70% of employees then feel that they don't have enough skills. They haven't been properly taught. The secret lies in the L, learn by practice. And this is where you create an environment and an opportunity, however you do it. And with workplace mentoring and coaching, this works ideally, is where the person does it over and over and over again. We speak in the training industry, we speak about reflexive competence. So being able to do it over and over and getting better and better at it. And this is the place and the process where you are going to allow them to make mistakes. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever done something the first time and got it right. Most of us probably make a mistake or two, or we slip up along the way. Now, I have painful memories of learning to ride a bicycle. The first time I fell off, my knee scraped, crying my eyes out, my knees burning. My father says to me, "You can only ride a bicycle if you've fallen off 7 times. 7 times. I mean, once was bad enough. He wants to go through another 6 times of it. But that's what's involved. If you want somebody to learn something and to learn it properly, you have to allow them to fall off the bicycle every now and then. You have to allow them to practice it and make a couple of mistakes. I'm not saying let them blow up the mainframe or let them cause a major fiscal catastrophe. Obviously, you have to mentor and you have to monitor and you have to make sure that you manage the mistake, that it doesn't cost you a small fortune in the process. But the only way we learn, the only way we gain experience is by doing things over and over and over. And that is why we have to have a situation where we create this environment. Now, a university will most likely not be able to cater for the learn by practice, because they won't be able to do it over and over all the time. I thought my laptop was plugged in. I just hope my battery doesn't die. You're going to have to give me 5 seconds now, Edward. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to do it over and over all the time to practice and to get better and better and better at it. And then you get to the 4th stage where you become good enough and you get to a point where you are then in a position to train somebody else. And that's where I call it teach it forward. So I've learned the skill. You've taught me the skill. You've allowed me to apply the skill. You've allowed me to learn through practicing it over and over and over again. And as a result, I have now become very good at the skill. And I've got to a position where I can then teach somebody else, because I have become as good as what I need to in the skill. So if we look at this process, it's a question of repetition over and over all the time. And by having repetition, we can then eventually learn to teach other people. We learn to become good at it. We learn to become mentors ourselves, that it then makes it easy for us to train other people and to get them to be better at it. So if we want to go to the next slide for me, please, Edward, then I want to add some science to this. I mean, we are a university, we are studying things. So if we look at some science, we have these electrons in our brains called axons, and it's covered with a sheath called the myelin sheath. Now, we have millions of these nerves in our brain that transfer information back and forth, and they're covered in the sheath. And what the sheath does, just hold on, plug this in for me, please. Just hold on, Edward. Just pull the plug out and plug it in over here, please, because the battery's going to die. So what we have is, with this myelin sheath, is that every time we learn something, new, then this information runs back and forth across this myelin, this axon. And every time that it goes back and forth, this sheath grows thicker and thicker, and it becomes bigger. And eventually what happens is that the information becomes automatic. Like the information becomes automatic, and we start doing it a lot easier because we can repeat it. So if you understand what I'm talking about, the myelin sheath then creates a situation where that axon remembers that action. It remembers whatever it was that I did because I've done it so many times. And then I start doing it automatically. It becomes a habit. And that is effectively how our subconscious then gets populated with this information. So the learning by experience feeds this myelin sheath. It helps this myelin sheath grow and become bigger and become stronger to be able to then move this information back and forth all the time. I want to use an example to give you, to explain this process that I've spoken about. So in other words, this salt, this training. Let's use a practical example. And let's go back to my coffee. I love coffee. So say you become the owner of a coffee shop. So you buy this coffee shop and you want it to be the best coffee shop that there is in your town, wherever, or your city. So you employ people and you personally teach them. You show them how to make the coffee. You show them how to set the tables. You show them how to carry the tray. You teach them all the fine details about making coffee. But if you don't let them actually try and make the coffee, you have no idea whether they will be able to make the coffee the way you want it, or whether they will be able to make it to the standard that you need or that your customers would enjoy. So under supervision, you let them make the cup of coffee. And then you see they make a mistake here, they make a mistake there. So you are still not feeding the coffee to your clients because you don't want to chase your customers away. But you are allowing these people to apply it. So you're having them practice it over and over. If they don't put the milk in right, then you get that. If they don't fill the cup to the right level, then you have them practice it over and over. So that learning by experience part is a vital component of any learning. If you do it over and over and over and over and over, then they will learn and they will get better, and you will be in a position where you can supervise them all the time until they get to a point where you say, great, I'm now going to give your coffee to the customer. And then they get better. And then they start becoming innovative. They start coming up with new ways of making coffee. I mean, when Sir Walter Raleigh introduced coffee to America, and everybody laughed at him and said it was never going to take off, and it became the hit that it is today, it was a question of grinding beans and adding boiling water. That's it. No sugar, no cream or milk. Today, you get all these different types of coffees, and people make all these funny little figures and things inside the froth that goes on top of the coffee. And that's only because people were allowed to practice and practice and practice and get better and better at making the coffee, and eventually come up with innovative ways of making coffee differently, that tastes better, that has a better sales possibility and people wanting it and spreading the love of coffee across the world and further. So the learn by experience is the important part. But now what happens? You've now spent a year, 2 years, training up these baristas of yours and getting them to make the proper, best cup of coffee that you can teach them to make. Some of them might have got better. They are now in a position, if you wanted to open more coffee shops, or you didn't want to be so involved in the training, that you could now use them to train the new people to make coffee. And that is the way that we eventually get training to be effective. I mean, if you look at the amount of money that is spent on training today, the figures that you get are usually the United States, and that's astronomical. I think it was something like $360 billion a year just on training. And then you get these large corporate executives that say to you, training's not effective. It's not working. I'm wasting my money. There's no return on my investment. And that is because we don't want to spend the time having them practice and learn that skill. We don't want to grow and increase and strengthen that myelin sheath on their axons. We've got to let them practice it over and over. As I said in the beginning, unfortunately, there's a cost involved. It's not something that comes cheap. I mean, if I was a training consultant, I wouldn't be doing it for free. I'd have to feed my family somehow. So I'd be charging you for it, and the people don't want to spend it. Organizations should get more involved in training. If we look at what's happened with COVID-19, we've moved online. Online is great because we can reach people quickly from our living rooms all across the world. The problem with online is there's no human connection. So we need to find a balance between it. Currently, only 16% of organizations feel that online is worthwhile. So we need to figure out a way of training these people. Some of you may have heard of the Korean proverb that's called bluer than indigo, which is exactly what I'm talking about. You need to train up somebody in something that they become as good or better than you. And that is the only way that you will get people to carry on the legacy of proper training and to teach people stuff. People that come from Africa and maybe South America and some of the more developing countries will realize that, and even all over the world really, there are certain skills that were taught in families that were passed down from generation to generation. And it's not something that somebody lying on his deathbed called his son one day and said, oh, I want to teach you quickly how to shoe a horse. No, it's something that they were taught from small. And if I could use the word, which for the lack of getting a better word, it was like they did an apprenticeship. So we need to do an apprenticeship with just about everything. So to wrap up, provide the knowledge. We need the knowledge so that we can broaden our minds, that we can broaden our horizons, that we can think and be creative, but knowledge on its own is not enough. Knowledge needs to be applied. We need to put it into practice. Whatever you do, you need to practice it and over again. And you need to get to a point where you gain enough experience to be able to teach somebody else. I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said, if you want to see if somebody learned something, ask them to teach it to somebody else. If they can, you know you've learned it. And you will only, when you get to the experience part, you will be able to teach somebody else. Right. So to end off with, as I said, the next slide, Edward. If you want to lead a horse to water and you want to make a drink, all you have to do is feed it enough salt and it will drink by itself. So the last slide, that is my presentation, short and sweet to try and get the time. My contact details are available. The QR code. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. My speciality is actually relational leadership. I write on relational leadership. I'm a leadership coach, but I also, as I said, I'm in the training space as a coach. I train, I mentor, and I own a training company. My email address, if you want to book a 15-minute chat and discuss this a bit further, or know a bit more about it, you can connect with me on Calendar. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. And I hope you are not part of the 41% that found this boring.
Thank you very, very much, Rowan Van Dyk from South Africa. This has been a presentation that met my heart. What I mean by this, I've been in education for so long. Those are ideas that I have indeed personally tried to put in practice, and you are super right, Rowan. I love the way you put this in chunks with the 3 steps you mentioned to do either a training or a teaching session, talking about the knowledge, the practice, and the experience. Those are ideas that are very well in line with what we call in the world of education Bloom's taxonomy, except that your way of looking at this is a very refined version, so to speak, of the way to present information to people so that they can move further than just the basic stage of the acquisition of knowledge. That was really wonderful. I love it, and I am certain that the participants are also in agreement with me. Now, let's close this presentation so that we can see the hands that are eventually up to ask questions. But I love this idea because one of the problems that educational institutions nowadays have is that they have everything, the tools, the equipment, the teachers, the professors, but the missing link is to innovate because the way people used to learn has improved, has changed. It's no longer the same way we used to have, let's say 10, 15, 20 years ago. And this is exactly where your presentation, Van Dyk, are completely in line with what we're trying to achieve with this symposium on innovative ideas. So let's first go to Lombayi Jires, who has the first question for our presenter, Rowan Van Dyk. Go ahead, Lombayi.
Hello.
Yes,
Can
we
you
are
hear me?
all ears.
I
You
can
may
hear
close the presentation on your end, Rowan, please.
Mr.
No, I think Edward opened it.
Okay, Dr. Lambert, you may, all right.
There we go.
Yes. Go ahead, Lombayi.
Yes. Thank you for today. I really liked the presentation for Dr. Van Dyk. I think if I can pronounce it well. So, but I get something that you said. Knowledge is not just it's not everything. We need to put our
That's all right.
hello.
Yes,
Hello,
go
I'm
ahead. Somebody
listening.
else was trying to jump in, but go ahead. We're asking again our participants who are not speaking about the topic to please turn off their microphones so that whoever is speaking, whoever has the turn to speak, can go freely about it. Thank you very much for your cooperation with this. Go ahead, Lombayi.
Yes. So my question is, if we have knowledge but we don't work with, so what will really happen if you have knowledge but you don't think That is the main thing that Mr. Van Dyk said. But what's if you have knowledge, but you think your mind is not like you're not thinking in the way that you go deep. So what can you do if you come to the problem like you cannot be able to make the things together, like to think better, but you have knowledge, but you don't have a way to grab maybe something through it. I don't know if you understand me.
Before I let Van Dyk address the issue you just brought up, I think if we go back to whatever Rowan was saying, we would sort of get the answer to the question that you just raised. Actually, what the presenter was telling us is knowledge is just the first stage of the presentation of information.
Yes.
We've got to move beyond that stage. We get the knowledge, but we've got to move beyond that stage. This is, as I said again, what Bloom in his 6 levels of knowledge was also explaining. We are moving from knowledge. We have the chunks of information, which we now have to go through in practice. We try to put this in practice. Remember, one example that Van Dyk was giving us was that the cup of coffee. You know, we teach somebody to make the coffee, but the knowledge is the one initial stage. But when we move beyond that, then we're gonna put that in practice. And after we practice over and over and over, which is what Van Dyk called the learn by experience type of information, then we acquire a certain level of expertise, so to speak, when we got the experience, and we become either equal to whoever provided that information at the very beginning, or even better than that. So that is my way of understanding your question and addressing that issue as well. But let me allow Rowan Van Dyk to get better into it and provide a better answer. Go ahead, Rowan.
I think you should just stick to the Rowan. My surname in South Africa, you would say Van Dyk, but if you think of a carpet, you could say Van Dyk. It would also work. But anyway, I think let's stick to Rowan. All right, yes. To answer, Dr. Valsine has given you a good explanation of what it is now. If you saw Edward put the slide back up a couple of minutes back. So knowledge is the foundation. You need the knowledge. You need to be taught knowledge, and then you build on that. That's the first step. But the knowledge on its own is not going to get you very far. You need to put that knowledge into practice. So you can't put anything into practice if you don't already have the knowledge. So knowledge is the first part, but we have to put it into practice. And the more we practice it, the more experience we gain. And so we move up the steps that we eventually get to the prize where we then can completely master whatever it is we were taught. Now, if you go, Dr. Valsine referred to Bloom. So if you look at Bloom's cognitive level, it starts with recall. So plain memory recall, I teach you something, 1 + 1, you tell me it's 2, that's it, you don't have to. Then it moves to understanding, then it moves up the ladder that it eventually gets to the synthesis part, which is then finding different ways of doing it. Now, the problem is with Bloom, especially that I find in the academic environment, sorry guys from Atlantic, is that they focus very strongly on the cognitive domain. And we leave the psychomotor domain behind. So what I am proposing is that we bring a lot more of the psychomotor domain in, and that is the practice and the experience by doing it and getting better and better and mastering the skill that you acquired through the initial knowledge. But you can't discount the knowledge. It has to start with knowledge.
That is very, very well said. I hope you are satisfied, Lambai, with Rowan's answer.
Yes, I am.
You are more than welcome to make additional comments.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Very
No
well.
problem.
This is exactly what our symposia are
Yes.
all about, to get into the concept of innovative ideas, regardless of the field. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, you are more than welcome to ask questions, and I can see the next hand up is from Nicholas Goodhart. Go ahead, Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Dr. Franklin. Even though I just came back from work and I joined the part of the knowledge and wisdom imparted by Dr. Rowan. It's very interesting. I just want to ask him, nowadays, companies don't want to train, they don't want to get people into practice, as you say, practice upon practice. And because of the price involved, it becomes very expensive for companies of skills or knowledge universities to train. I mean, to keep people in practice until you become experienced. So what do you think should be done at this present time? Is it at the university level or at the workplace? Can you put it in context? Is it at the university level or at the workplace, the practice?
Okay, if you are using a university for the knowledge, you have to develop a partnership with the university, because the university doesn't always have the facilities to be able to have somebody practice something over and over again. There needs to be a partnership. It can't be, I send them to university and I expect university to wave a magic wand and suddenly I get a perfect employee. You have to take responsibility as a business owner, as a manager, as an executive, that it's your responsibility as well. You know, it's the same as going to school. And I think we live in a society these days where parents send their children to school and they expect the teacher to be 100% responsible for the upbringing of the child. It's actually your responsibility as the parent to set the foundation, the values, the character, all of that before the child goes to school. So we shirk that responsibility, and we do it in business as well. So I hear what you're saying. Big business especially uses the excuse, it's too expensive. But there are so many initiatives all over the world, especially in Africa, where there is funding from training authorities, governmental training authorities that provide funding for training. All people need to do is get involved. So what I'm saying is that universities and tertiary institutions do not have the resources to 100% apply the practical. They can assist with it, but you need to partner with them as an organization, and then in your organization have a mentor or a workplace coach or somebody that will take that person on a program and allow them. If you look at the old apprenticeship system, the person went to a technical college. They were taught the technical trade theory, and then they went back into the workplace and they went and put it into practice. So if they were a carpenter, they would learn the theory for 3 months of the year, and for 9 months of the year, they would work as a carpenter in the workplace under a qualified artisan that would mentor them. We need to do that across the board for all types of training. And you can't expect just the tertiary institutions to do it. Workplace is going to have to get involved more.
Thank you very much, Rowan. We are turning now to Krumi Sefadin. Go ahead with your question or comment, please. Krumi?
Yes, good evening, everybody. This is Krumi Sefadin. First of all, I would like to thank Rowan for the very inspiring presentation. I just have a question that I want to ask. Because we have seen is talking about knowledge, practice, and experience. Then I want to ask, at the institutional level, yes, it is true, we have to have knowledge, and then you have to practice, and then you get experience. But I want to ask, is it possible also for somebody to practice, and then from that practice, they gain knowledge and then experience? Because we have some people you find you don't know something, but you start practicing, and by practicing, you end up getting knowledge on that thing, and then experience comes. I just want to know, is it always must it be knowledge, practice, and experience, or is it to have practice something, and then by practicing, especially if it's not at institutional level or at school level, you practice something and then you gain knowledge of what you have practiced, especially if you have not been doing that in the practice, and through practice, whether through errors or whatever, you get experience. You get knowledge and then experience. I just want to know the difference between these two. Is it possible? Must it always be from knowledge, practice, and experience, or is it also possible to have practice and then knowledge and then experience? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Rowan.
I'm sorry, but I heard something about the difference and something about knowledge, but I really struggled to hear what Kumi was saying. Did you catch what he was saying?
Actually, I did have the same issue as you did, Rowan. I believe there might be some problem with the microphone used by Kumi. I missed a significant portion of the question or comment he was making, but I understand that more or less he was sort of being second to what you were saying in terms of the importance of connecting the experience, the practical aspect of every piece of knowledge that we acquire. Let's now go to Felix Bafoy for a question. Felix, your microphone, please turn it on. Felix?
Felix, you're muted.
Felix Bafoy, your microphone.
Okay.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Felix from Ghana. Yeah. Mine is on the first presentation. Then a study of nation's economic system. Yeah, the efficiency of production and performance, the fairness of wealth distribution, comparing European countries and African countries. If the European countries are performing better, why can't African too perform better as well as the European? And many African countries, I don't know much for the European countries, but it seems the corruption in the African country politicians or governance is more than the European. So how is the African country going to do or
I'm very sorry to interrupt you.
Contribute to their government.
I'm very sorry to interrupt you, Felix. There is a request that we have made on multiple occasions to ask those who are not speaking to the presenter to please turn off your microphone, because we're having an echo and that creates an issue. Like right now, there are some of the participants with their microphones on and they are not speaking. Let's see if we can resolve that issue, please. If you are not speaking, if you are not asking a question, you are not making a comment, kindly turn off your microphones. Let's try again, Felix.
Yeah, doctor.
Yes.
Yes. Which one?
Yeah, I was on the first presentation, the study of nations' economic system. That was the first presentation. It wasn't from Rowan Van Dyk, but I think there's a quote from Dr. Charles J. also. So the first presentation. So I don't know if the one who gave the first presentation is still online. The difference on why the European countries are doing much better than the African countries in terms of development. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So that question is for the previous presenter.
yeah, and most of the African countries, most of the youth are trying to travel abroad to the European countries because they don't know what the difference between the difference between African and European or only United States, United Kingdom and other countries. We don't know why, because the African countries, most of the youth want to travel outside. We don't know the reason why.
Rowan, you have a say on this?
Okay,
If anyone,
Felix appears to be wanting to get information from the previous speaker, but all I can say about corruption and the rest of it, we'll get that everywhere. Unfortunately, with training, I don't know how the two connect with one another. So I don't know if one of you want to address that, Edward or somebody, because it appears to be for the previous speaker.
I side with you completely, Rowan. It's very, very critical that we manage our very best to stay on the topic in question. In the case of Rowan Van Dyk, the topic is SALT to effective training. SALT, like he was saying, is an acronym. The S standing for show and tell, the A for application, the L for learn by practice, and the T, teach it forward. So again, this is the topic being on the table at this time, SALT to effective training. Forget about the acronym SALT, which I just explained. Let's think of effective training. The three pillars of that concept, according to the presenter, are knowledge, practice, and experience. So let's try our best so that everybody can take full advantage of the symposium, every aspect of it, stay on the topic. If there are some other issues, of course, that can pertain to you, the participants, you can use the chat screen and ask the questions. And those of us who, every once in a while, look at the chat screen, we can manage to answer your questions. But for now, with Rowan Van Dyk, the topic is about effective training. All right, now let's go to Mahamat Lamin Yaqub. Turn your microphone on and please ask your question or make the comment. Mahamat.
Hello.
We are listening to you, Mahamat.
Okay, I'm Mahamat Lamin Yaqub. I'm from Chad in Africa. Okay, I have no question, but I just want to congratulate the various speakers for their impeccable work. For me, it is a great honor to be part of your circle, and I hope that my second, I will have the honor of making a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mahamat.
I'm very so happy. Okay,
all right. We share your happiness, and so do all the participants at this new symposium of Atlantic International University. Let's see if we have another hand up. Not that I can see, but
Dr. Velsin?
Yes.
I noticed two questions in the chat that I'd just like to address quickly. The one is from Friedrich. Okay. He asked the question about how do we measure effectiveness of training. In most cases, you would have some sort of an ROI measure where you could, if you were doing safety training, for instance, you would be able to compare the decrease in accidents in the workplace to the amount spent on training and what you saved in safety. So there are some quantitative measures that you can do. The best measure that we use is if you are teaching somebody a new skill is to see, are they actually applying the skill? Is there an improvement in the way they work? So training is difficult. There's no real scientific measure. You can use Kirkpatrick and these guys to try and measure the effectiveness of training, but a lot of times you can't quantify it. So I hope that answers your question. And then to get back to Kumi's question that we couldn't hear in the chat, he wanted to know, is it possible to first practice and gain experience and then gain knowledge? In a lot of cases, you need the knowledge, but it is in certain instances, it would be possible to be taught a skill without having the underlying knowledge or the theory component, and that you would eventually in time to then be completely competent in the skill, you would have to add the knowledge. So not a normal practice, but it is possible.
All right, thank you very, very much, Rowan Van Dyk. As a matter of fact, to piggyback a little bit on what you just mentioned, usually whenever there is a training, there is a way before we go to long-term assessment, there is a way to instantly gauge the value or the worth of the training by simply asking the participants. I have attended several training sessions and I usually have to produce an evaluation of the presenter. If I believe as a participant that whatever I get from that session, from that training is of high value, so I say so. And since those data are compiled somewhere, there is a way to determine whether the training was effective. Of course, I fully agree with the idea that it has to be on the long term as well, looking at the actual outcomes or results of whatever that training has yielded with the participants. All right, thank you very, very much, Rowan Van Dyk. Your presentation has proved really to be outstanding, and we wish you good luck. You've also done something of high value to provide participants with both your website and your email address, which is making open the ways for people to keep in touch with you and eventually acquire some more knowledge about effective training. Thank you very much.
Anytime. I mean, this time is limited here. Anybody wants to discuss further, contact me. I'm open to discussions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's remind everybody